Honus Wagner, 1908 with the Pittsburgh Pirates. In 1908, Honus Wagner didn't just have a great season, he basically redefined what a shortstop could do. The man was 34 years old, and while most players would be slowing down, he was out there running circles around everybody. He played 151 games and piled up 201 hits, 39 doubles, 19 triples, and 10 home runs. Keep in mind, hitting double-digit homers back then was like launching 40 today. Pitchers dominated that era, and the baseballs were softer, so home runs were almost mythical. Wagner's .354 batting average and .542 slugging percentage were outrageous numbers for the time. And then there's his 109 RBIs, which is mind-blowing for someone hitting in the dead ball era, but it wasn't just about the power or the average. The guy also swiped 53 bases, showing he could outrun, outthink, and outplay almost everyone. His OPS of .957 was proof that he wasn't just a contact hitter or a speedster. He was doing everything at once. Wagner basically turned shortstop from a defense-only role into a complete position. He could field like a wall and then turn around and crush pitchers with his bat. Putting it plainly, Wagner was a problem for anyone who faced him. He led the league in batting average, hits, total bases, RBIs, doubles, and stolen bases, all in the same year. That's not just good. That's video game numbers. So if anyone still wonders why Honus Wagner's baseball card is worth a fortune, well, this 1908 season is your answer. Ozzie Smith, 1987 with the St. Louis Cardinals. In 1987, Ozzie Smith proved that shortstops could win games with more than just their gloves. Everyone already knew the Wizard could pull off defensive plays that looked straight out of a magic show, but that season, he took his offense to another level too. At age 32, when most players aren't at their best, Ozzie had his best year at the plate. He hit .303, racked up 182 hits, scored 104 runs, and stole 43 bases. For a guy known mostly for defense, those numbers turned heads all across baseball. He didn't hit any home runs that season, but it didn't matter. His job was to get on base, cause chaos, and make things happen, and he did that perfectly. He also finished with a .392 on-base percentage, easily the best of his career. His defense stayed elite as always, and he won yet another Gold Glove, his 8th straight at that point. He was diving for grounders, flipping double plays, and throwing runners out from positions no one else could even reach. Ozzie finished second in the MVP voting that year, just behind Andre Dawson, but a lot of fans still believe he should have won it. He was the engine of that Cardinals team that made it all the way through the World Series. 1987 was the year Ozzie Smith showed he wasn't just a human highlight reel on defense. He was a complete player who could carry a team in every way that mattered. Cal Ripken Jr., 1983 with the Baltimore Orioles. Cal Ripken Jr.'s 1983 season was the moment he became a superstar, just his second full year in the majors, and he played like a veteran who'd been dominating for a decade. He didn't just play every game. He owned every inning. That year, he hit .318 with 27 home runs, 102 RBIs, and led the league in hits with 211. He also scored 121 runs and knocked 47 doubles, which were insane numbers for a shortstop back then. His defense was just as good as his bat. Ripken had a cannon for an arm and one of the surest gloves in baseball. He led all shortstops in assists and double plays while maintaining a .970 fielding percentage. And let's not forget, he was doing all this while helping lead the Orioles to the World Series. He made tough plays look routine and came up with clutch hits when the team needed them most. At the end of that season, Ripken won both the American League MVP and a World Series ring. Not bad for a 23-year-old. His combination of power, consistency, and durability set a new standard for shortstops everywhere. Before him, shortstops were mostly known for defense, but Ripken changed that completely. He showed that the guy at short could also be the team's best hitter. That 1983 season didn't just make him an MVP, it also started a new era for what shortstops could be. Barry Larkin, 1995 with the Cincinnati Reds. Barry Larkin's 1995 season was the perfect mix of speed, smarts, and skill. He didn't just have a good year, he had the kind of season that made people rethink what a shortstop could do. Larkin hit .319 that year with 15 home runs, 66 RBIs, and 98 runs scored. He also stole 51 bases, making him one of the few players in history to combine that kind of power and speed in one season. The Reds fed off his energy all year. He was the team's captain and their spark plug, leading them to the National League Central title. On defense, he was as reliable as ever. He made tough plays look easy, showing off smooth hands, great range, and quick footwork. His fielding percentage was .984, which was one of the best among shortstops that year. But what made Larkin's 1995 season truly special was how balanced it was. He wasn't just fast, and he wasn't just strong. He was great at everything. He hit for average, stole bases, played elite defense, and led by example. That all-around dominance earned him the National League MVP award, making him the first shortstop to win it since Maury Wills in 1962. No doubt Larkin did everything right in 1995. He was the kind of player every coach dreams of. He was steady, smart, and always dependable. When you think of complete shortstop seasons, Larkin's 1995 campaign is one of the best ever, and it's easy to see why. Lou Boudreau, 1948 with the Cleveland Indians. Lou Boudreau's 1948 season wasn't just great. It was the kind of year that makes baseball history books worth reading. He was 30 years old, the player-manager of the Cleveland Indians, and somehow managed to lead his team both on the field and from the dugout. That alone is wild. Managing and hitting .355 in the same year. You can barely find people today who can balance two jobs like that, but Boudreau did it, and he did it better than almost anyone ever has. That season, Boudreau collected 199 hits and 560 at-bats, scored 116 runs, and drove in 106. He also hit 18 home runs and 34 doubles, finishing with an OPS close to .987. His on-base percentage of .453 is ridiculous even by today's standards. To put that in perspective, that means he reached base nearly half the time he came to the plate. That's not luck, that's pure discipline and skill, and he did all of that while calling plays and managing his pitching staff. The Indians finished that year by winning the World Series, which made Boudreau's performance even more legendary. He wasn't just padding his stats, he was leading his team to a championship, and he wasn't managing from the bench either. He was right there on the field, hitting doubles, drawing walks, and outsmarting opponents. It's one of those seasons that perfectly blends brains and brawn. Defensively, Boudreau was sharp as ever. He turned double plays smoothly, handled grounders with confidence, and made his pitchers look even better. That mix of leadership, defense, and insane offense made him a clear choice for American League MVP that year. Simply put, Lou Boudreau's 1948 season showed that shortstops could do it all. They could lead, hit for average, hit for power, and still play clean defense. It was a season that changed how people looked at the shortstop position forever. Alex Rodriguez, 1996 with the Seattle Mariners. Alex Rodriguez's 1996 season is one of those years that makes you stop and wonder if the guy was even human. He was just 20 years old playing for the Seattle Mariners, and he put up numbers that would make even veterans jealous. At that age, most players are still figuring out how to handle major league pitching. A-Rod wasn't just handling it, he was destroying it. He hit .358 that season with 36 home runs, 54 doubles, and 123 RBIs. Those are monster numbers for anyone, but for a 20-year-old shortstop, it was unreal. He also led the league in runs, scored with 141, and finished second in the MVP voting behind Juan Gonzalez. Honestly, you could argue he deserved that MVP. His OPS was 1.045, which is video game level production. And remember, this was before all the big home run numbers exploded later in the decade. What made A-Rod's season so shocking was how complete it was. He wasn't just swinging for the fences, he hit for average, drove in runs, and played solid defense at one of the toughest positions on the field. Shortstops were still seen mainly as defensive anchors back then, but A-Rod showed they could be power hitters too. He was smooth, fast, and his swing looked effortless. Everything he did seemed natural. It also helped that he was playing next to stars like Ken Griffey Jr. and Edgar Martinez. That Mariners lineup was loaded and A-Rod fit right in, playing like he'd been in the league for years. His confidence was off the charts, and he had this calm focus that made it easy to forget he was barely old enough to drink. That season basically announced A-Rod to the baseball world as the next big thing. And for that 1 year, before the controversy and headlines, it was just pure baseball greatness. A 20-year-old kid who could hit like a veteran, field like a Gold Glover, and change how people thought about what a shortstop could be. Ernie Banks, 1959 with the Chicago Cubs. Ernie Banks' 1959 season is one of those "you've got to be kidding me" years. By then, Banks had already won the 1958 MVP, and somehow he followed it up with an even better season. Playing for a struggling Chicago Cubs team, Banks was a one-man wrecking crew. He hit .304 with 45 home runs and drove in 143 runs, which for a shortstop in the 1950s was just absurd. Nobody at that position had ever done it quite like that before. The craziest part, the Cubs finished with a losing record that year. They weren't anywhere near the postseason, but Banks still dominated so completely that voters couldn't ignore him. He won the National League MVP again, becoming the first shortstop ever to win back-to-back MVP awards. That says a lot about just how special that season was. Banks wasn't a huge guy, but his power was ridiculous. His swing was quick, compact, and explosive. He made hitting home runs look easy, even in an era when most shortstops were happy just to hit a few out of the park. The fact that he hit 45 bombs while still playing elite defense at shortstop, that's baseball perfection. He was also one of the most positive players the game has ever seen. His nickname, Mr. Cub, says it all. Even when his team wasn't winning, Banks played every game with joy and energy. He made people believe baseball was supposed to be fun, and in 1959, that joy was matched by raw production. That season completely changed how teams viewed shortstops. After Banks, managers started to realize that the position didn't have to be all about defense. You could have a shortstop who hit like a cleanup hitter, and Banks was the blueprint. He made power at shortstop not just possible, but expected. Rogers Hornsby, 1917 with the St. Louis Cardinals. Rogers Hornsby's 1917 season feels like something out of a different sport. Baseball was a totally different game back then, built around bunting, stealing, and small ball tactics. But Hornsby, he was doing his own thing. At just 21 years old, he hit .327 with 171 hits, 17 triples, 8 home runs, and 66 RBIs. Those numbers might not look wild next to modern stats, but for 1917, they were elite. The thing about Hornsby was that he played shortstop with a hitter's mentality. Most shortstops in that era were glove-first guys who barely hit above .250. Hornsby came in and said, "Why not both?" His bat was so consistent that pitchers hated facing him. He could spray the ball to all fields, and his power, especially to the gaps, was something you just didn't see often from a shortstop at that time. His 17 triples tell you how fast he was. Those weren't cheap hits either. They were line drives that split outfielders or rolled to the wall. And remember, this was during the dead ball era when the baseball itself didn't travel far. So the fact that Hornsby hit 8 home runs that season is even more impressive. Defensively, he was still finding his way, but his athleticism made up for it. He had great hands, strong range, and the kind of confidence that makes a young player stand out fast. His instincts were elite, and by the end of that season, people around the league knew he was something special. That 1917 season was the start of one of the greatest hitting careers in baseball history. Hornsby would go on to win multiple batting titles and even 2 MVP awards later on, but this season was his coming out party. He showed that even in an era focused on small ball and defense, a shortstop could be a serious offensive weapon, and that changed the way the position was viewed for decades to come. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more baseball action.